Welcome back to another episode of the Bourbon Lens. This is Jake along with Scott, and today we are joined by a trio of family members that you probably know. And this is the Call family. They are the co-founders of Hemingway Whiskey, and they are partnering with Western Kentucky Spirits. So, Calls, thanks for joining this episode of the Bourbon Lens.
Thanks. Appreciate it.
So it's a spring day, and we're getting around to your rye whiskey that was first sent out to a few people in November or late last fall, and we're getting to try the first edition tonight. But there's been a whole slew of things that have happened since the last time we saw Jacob about this time last year. So just how are things going on with the family? Post transition to the new role.
Yeah, man. We've done a lot. I'm building a distillery down in Western Kentucky now. We've launched, got the Hemingway Rye Whiskey brand launched. So we have been very, very busy.
Yeah, I'm sure that keeps the wheels turning, ever since, you make the transition and dive into, new roles and responsibilities. And so for those who don't know, the Call family has a deep lineage in whiskey. So, Ron, I'm going to start with you. Can you just give us a little background on the Call family name and what that means to distilling and what people should be learning from you all?
Well, I started with Jim Beam 1974, June the 3rd. So I've been in this business 49 years. And my dad worked for Jim Beam too, and he was with Jim Beam 16 years. And both of us worked with Booker, and my dad worked in the distillery with him, and I had the privilege of working with him and running distilleries on night shift and making the yeast and doing all the dirty stuff, from runouts to distillation, fermentation, making the yeast, the whole works. And then got recruited out and moved to Florida and had a lot of more opportunities down in Florida. And opportunities keep growing. And this was a very good chance for the family, work with the kids and work with Steve and his kids. And, so both of Steve's kids I guess I'm the oldest guy around here, but Steve's kids are about the same age as my son. So it's kind of unique to have two elders and their kids working with them on a new project. So it's a great opportunity for everyone, I think.
No, that's exciting. So guys, how's it like working with your dad every day now?
It's great. Not many people get that chance, So, when Steve gave me the opportunity to come aboard, it was a blessing to be able to work with family. So, and I'm sure, Jacob will touch on this because he usually does. But the family name actually goes back to 1791 that Jacob was able to find out. And I think let him speak to that because it's pretty awesome story.
Yeah. So actually, during COVID, I kind of got a little bit bored and was doing a lot of genealogical research and ended up hiring a lady and was able to go way back in our lineage. And a guy named Samuel Call came to Bourbon County, Kentucky in 1791. He happened to have 10 kids, so they were all fighting over his estate. So with that came a lawsuit, which was good for me because I could find all of his documents that were filed. So turns out he had a 120-gallon still. He had a 70-gallon still. He had a dozen fermenters. So definitely not a hobby. He was in the whiskey making business in Bourbon County. Also found some paperwork. He had some land dealings with Elijah Craig. So, that was the best $500 I ever spent on this genealogist that helped me research some of this stuff. But, then like Dad said, of course, my grandfather at Jim Beam, my dad at Jim Beam, then my dad at Florida Distillers at creating all the Cruzan rum products down there. And then I went to work for my dad and did, I guess, a lot of the more challenging jobs when I was in college, working on the bottling line, processing, had a cattle farm. We used to take care of cattle, and my dad still has cattle down there. So, and then you guys know, got the chance to move back to Kentucky and rebuild the old Green River Distillery, the old Charles Medley Distillery. And yeah, that place was sold recently, and decided to take the jump and go build my own distillery with a good friend of mine, JD Edwards, and should be up and running in June of this year.
Oh wow, June. It'll be here before we know it. Jeez.
Life comes at you fast, right?
This podcast might be releasing around that time, so it's probably pretty timely.
Yeah, we just put out the notice that we're hiring. Newspaper ads and everything went out today. So we've already, in like 4 hours, I've got 65 resumes. So
I saw that. I applied. Did you see my application?
Right to the bottom of the list.
He applied for a distillery supervisor, so that means he is sweeping duty. So, I think about, man, like the thought of working with my dad, and I've done that. He was in the moving business, so I was a grunt moving trucks, right? So I know what it was like to work with him, and there's all types of crazy stories. I was just, I was telling y'all beforehand, I was at my church and we were doing cleanup work, and my dad was like around supervising and just saying stuff as the elder statesmen do, and they make terrible dad jokes. So I'm sure you all have stories about like what's it like to work with dad and family. Do you ever find there to be conflicts, or do you seem it to be pretty hunky dory when working collectively as a group?
We get along pretty good, except when Jacob drops a roll of bob wire on my head.
Now there's got to be more to that story.
Will always do that.
No, just some 4-letter words, so I can't repeat them.
Yeah, we had. That's why I moved back to Kentucky, because he used to work me so hard. We had a lot of cattle down there, so that was too tough. I had to get back into making whiskey.
Yeah, back on that old plant Jacob was talking about. I actually took my dad to the old plant that he revitalized. I took my dad because he could recognize a lot of the equipment that was in there. And before that, I actually interviewed when that plant was operational, because I got tired of working at Beam. So, but when I looked at it, I took 2 investment groups there, and it was just, like Jacob said, it was just too much of a challenge, and it was way too much for a guy my age. So I'm glad Jacob done it. So, but it was.
Yeah, my hair wasn't white when I started that.
So speaking of, right, you go from revitalizing one of the more iconic distilleries in Western Kentucky to building something brand new and shiny with the idea of, hey, we're going to just produce a crap ton of liquid, right? Like that's what Western Kentucky Spirits is about. It's more of your industrial, opportunity, pump out whiskey. So what's that like going from, hey, we're revitalizing this old still and trying to like add new equipment as possible, to, hey, we're going to get the newest of the new and build out the technology aspect of it. So what's the differences and challenges that you've seen going from that revitalization to that new, whiskey operation standards?
So far, it's been easier to build a new one than try to make Frankenstein pieces and parts together. So far it's been easier. We still got Vendome. Vendome's making all of our equipment. You learn a lot whenever you build a distillery the first time. So we learned, maybe some ways to do things a little faster and easier. But we're pretty rural. Our spot, the old Medley place was downtown Owensboro, only on 24 acres. The Western Kentucky Distillery is on 81 acres. We join about a 1,200 acre farm that's not developed. We're going to grow corn and actually the rye for Hemingway Rye Whiskey will be grown right on site at the distillery. So we'll start producing rye whiskey for Hemingway this year.
Well, that's exciting. So, I think that's a really interesting segue into the Hemingway. Rye typically isn't grown in Kentucky, right? Like that's not a traditional thing. So what type of rye are y'all utilizing to be able to grow it and harvest it in Kentucky, where it's traditionally Northeast or, into Canada and Minnesota?
Yeah, we'll do it.
Yeah,
go ahead.
Been a little older than you guys. We used to grow rye all the time. So rye is a Kentucky crop. So it just, you get away from it because it's high in protein. And so people start growing wheat and barley. But rye was one of the mainstays, grains, and that was George Washington's. That's what he used in Mount Vernon. So, but rye typically, I was always told it grows on poor soil. So that kind of blends into Kentucky in places. But rye has been around a long time. People just quit growing it. So.
No, I think that's interesting. And so is rye a good crop, like a rotating crop product, right? So plant something one year.
It's a great cover crop for winter.
Yeah. Okay.
Very, very, very hardy. Grows real well when it's cool. So
yeah, that's kind of our plan. Is once the corn crop goes out, we'll plant some rye behind it, some winter rye. That's the game plan for this fall.
Yeah.
No, that's exciting.
And our plan for Clayton is to go up there, and when they start mashing and making rye whiskey, he'll be right there mashing it, distilling it, fermenting, the whole works, rolling barrels, filling barrels, and warehousing. So,
man, Clayton, you don't get to use any technology. You get to roll barrels, no forklifts.
Yeah, it's supposed to just be the Call family, the ambassador here. Now they're putting me to work. So.
Sounds like free labor to me.
I'm supposed to be out doing tastings and telling the stories, and now they're putting my ass to work.
Oh man. We've all been there. We've all been little brother or just been told to do something that we don't want to do, right?
No, I'm actually looking forward to it. It's going to be fun. It's going to be awesome. So
will this be your first time like in the distillery cutting your teeth that way?
I came up kind of behind Jacob, the same upbringing. He's 4 years older. So just like he was saying earlier, at Florida Distillers, once he was gone, it was kind of my turn where I was the one mopping floors, cleaning tanks, eventually producing product. So, overseeing the family farms and the cattle. So, but eventually I ended up starting my own business and kind of got away from things, but I've always been the family taster. So, every time Dad and Jacob are making something or formulating, it's always, hey, try this, compare this to that. So I've always been around it. And this was, like I said earlier, a blessing to the Groth family for including me in this role. So
I'm going to say definitely a blending of your strengths.
Some may say you have a drinking problem, Clay.
I just think my palate's pretty good.
Experienced whiskey drinker.
Yeah.
I
kind of, sound like a consumer, just like you guys and everyone that listens to this show. Just have a love for whiskey and now rye. And I'm just like you guys. Rye wasn't one of my top choices years ago, but now that you got great distillers out there doing different finishes, and it's come a long way. It's pretty neat to see.
That is an interesting perspective, though, like to have the consumer perspective, because I could imagine like if I worked in a large distillery and tasting, we'll just say Jim Beam. Like we all know what Jim Beam's supposed to taste like. We keep producing Jim Beam and it's going to keep tasting like Jim Beam. And when it doesn't taste like Jim Beam, then shit, you either screwed up or somebody changed something and didn't tell you. Yeah. So it's just interesting. Like on a smaller scale, you'll have more flexibility to say, okay, this is where minds and, hearts and minds of whiskey drinkers is leaning. So
I was their quality manager for 16 years during all that too. So I've done a ton of testing, but we called it White Dog back then, the new distillant. And then we would run all the chemical analysis and compare it against after it finished 4 years. So, it was a tough ass job, 6 o'clock in the morning after you've been out all night. So, but that's what we had to do. So
that was your morning coffee, right?
Yeah, that was a good wake up call.
So one of the things, right, talking about rye whiskey, and that transition, what's that like? Cutting your teeth on bourbon. Obviously, you did other distillates at Florida Distillers, like coming back and working with a hard grain, right? Everyone says it's gummy, it gums up the system and creates, all types of chaos when creating it. What's it like going from bourbon, moving into, rye whiskey, which is, that secondary product, right? Bourbon's king right now in America, but rye has great fandom and is a continuing growing category. So what's it like to try to bridge that gap in rye, and then make that, what's seemingly harder to make product?
Yeah, you're right. Rye is difficult. It's tricky. It can turn to super glue, can foam over, if you don't watch what you're doing. We made a lot of rye at Green River. I mean, we'd make probably 5,000-6,000 barrels a year of rye whiskey. So, I had some barrels that I'd made, and with the Hemingway product, this first edition is actually a blend of 94% of it is 95% MGP rye, and then the remaining 6% is 4-year-old Green River 95% rye that I produce. So, thankfully, there's quite a bit still floating around through some Steve Groth, our co-founder, has some barrels, and our plan is to keep blending those in and make those blends get a little bit bigger towards stuff I've made as we go along, and then eventually transition it all to Western Kentucky Distillery.
Yeah, I mean, I think rye whiskey is so approachable, and from a distillery perspective or brand perspective, you can put it out at a younger age statement and be okay, right? Rye can mature at 3 years versus 4, or even quicker than that if you want to push it out quicker, right? I think we all know that, but a good rye method that I like to follow myself is 3 years old. That's a really quality age statement. Just I'm looking for bottled and bond on bourbon, that 3-year-old kind of idea for rye is what I like. So having some barrels and then moving that to Western Kentucky, you're not going to be too far off on the cycle of being able to bring your all's product to life, right?
Yeah, I mean, we'll never be less than 4, but we'll keep blending in some older stuff with it, and that's kind of what makes Hemingway unique. We're pretty honest and open about what we're doing. We're just picking out the best ryes and we're blending it, and then my dad is finishing it in a rum seasoned Oloroso sherry cask that he's got down in Florida. Yeah, and another thing we say, we don't really have a set time, how long we're going to finish it. We all taste it. We'll send samples around, and, if it's 3 months, it's 3 months, 3.5 months, whatever we think tastes right.
That's Clayton's main job is tasting, and he's got a group of whiskey geeks down there at where he lives. So I got a pretty good panel. So.
How's it feel to be called a whiskey geek, Clayton?
I'm sorry.
How's it feel to be called a whiskey geek?
I've been called worse, so I just roll with it. That's Steve. That's what Steve likes to call me. He's a whiskey geek. So, but now like he said, I've got some really good friends here that, Dad sends it out. I try it, a couple other people, and like we say, we just finished the taste. So, like Jacob said, it could be 2 months, 4 months, 3 months, whatever. We try it, and when we like it and agree, that's when we say let's do it. So.
We kind of got the advantage over some folks because we control these all the casks. I've used them and I know what's been in them and the cycles. So that's one reason I think 100% confident we're going to be consistent on all these batches. So.
When it comes to finishing, right, it is, kind of a wait and see, in each batch could be different, for you all. Do you look to make this spirit a vintage spirit to where it's, edition 1, edition 2, edition 3, or is it going to be like a release of fall and a spring? What do you all look to do from a marketing perspective to talk about the variation in the batch?
Well, yeah. So
right now,
we had the collectors. Yeah, we had the collector's edition that came out. That was the 972 bottles that was online only. That went phenomenal. We sold out in 6 days, I believe, online. But we found out people didn't really want to, try it. They're collectors. They wanted to keep it. So we put out 2,000 more cases of this same product that's first edition. We will have a signature coming out around Father's Day. So that's going to be kind of a signature series on the shelf. And to answer your question, I do foresee, having something sitting beside that signature series on a shelf.
No, I think that's exciting. And will it always be the rum cask finish or the Oloroso rum, or will you expand into, as they do different cask finishes with the rum, will you expand your cask portfolio?
I mean, there's always a possibility of that, but right now we're more oriented on this Oloroso sherry because it makes a great product. So otherwise, I'd be experimenting, and I don't need to do that at this point. So
no, I get that.
But yeah, I think Hemingway, from a marketing standpoint, he was a traveler. He was an adventurer. He was probably the most interesting man in the world before there was the most interesting man in the world. He was in World War I as a journalist, went back to World War II, supposed to be a journalist, and raised his own battalion from locals and got, I think, a Bronze Star for bravery. The guy was just he was incredible. So I think, we've got some ideas. He visited a lot of countries in the Caribbean, South America. So we've got some pretty cool ideas for second edition, third edition type things down the road that might play on that a little bit.
No, I think that's great. I just went to Barbados last fall, and just to see like all the different things that they're doing with rum is crazy. And the different types of experimentation that these rum companies are putting out is very unique. And you get these sherry butts, right, that are huge compared to a regular bourbon barrel. So that's the question kind of that I have around that. Are you all batching or blending the product in so that, the 9 and 4-year-old blending that together, then putting in the sherry butt, or how's that kind of working, from a, batch perspective? I'm using bad words, but you get what your all's heads are shaking. So you understand what I'm saying.
Yeah.
You nailed it on the head. It's you do your blending and based on the percent of the older rum, the older rye and the younger rye, and then we finish in the sherry cask.
Okay.
So,
nice.
I've got 60 gallon cask. I got 66, and so and various steps. So.
Yeah, and the reason I asked is because I just recently saw a release from another distiller, and they only did a portion of their blend in a finished barrel, and then they blended that with the rest of the whiskey. So there's more than one way to skin a cat, right? So that's why I just thought I'd ask how you all were bringing your all's finished product to life.
Yeah. Well, right now everything goes into the sherry cask to be finished.
And for your all's like aging perspective, are you all aging it down there in Western Kentucky, or where you all where's the secondary aging happening?
Yeah, that happens. Yeah, that happens in Central Florida. So my dad has a bottling plant down in Central Florida, and they do all of the bottling and batching down there. Eventually we'll be the brand home of Hemingway whiskey up in Kentucky, but we've got a ways to go yet. We're starting to make whiskey. We're not too focused on the tourism side of things just yet.
Well, and that makes a really big difference, right? Like the humidity, the different temperature swings that you get in Florida, right? That's going to get different barrel extraction. So you have to be even more mindful, I would say, there than you do here in Kentucky with the temperature swings and the barrel extraction. Checking that barrel maybe twice a day versus, in Kentucky, like, oh, we check it once a day and it's fine. I'm sure there can be a lot of change with all the humidity in the air in Central Florida.
Yeah, it's mostly just heat, consistently warm. And same way with finishing rum. I think it'll finish or age in half the time.
No, I think that makes sense. So we've talked a lot about, the process. Let's talk a little bit about the whiskey itself. It's a beautiful bottle. Clayton, you got it sitting behind you here. Though no one can see it, but I can.
Yeah.
Talk to us a little bit about the design that you all have kind of come up with for the bottle.
I mean, the design is, you want it to stand out, obviously, but you don't want to overdo it. And like, as you can see, it's, you got Hemingway and then RYE, just that pop out, basically typewriter keys right here. The cool thing is this library card here in the back. So, after we're done, here, and I've had, a drink with you guys during the podcast, I can write that down right here, who I shared it with. My tasting notes, I could put your tasting notes, so just a cool little thing to always, keep and be able to look back on and know when you shared it with important people. So.
No, I mean, that's a slick little thing because my palate changes. Oxidation is a thing. I don't care what anyone else says to the like you open up a bottle of whiskey, it's going to change over time. Like you can't convince me otherwise because science says I'm right. I think that would be really cool to go back to a bottle. Sometimes I only write my tasting notes once and then I just go enjoy the whiskey. Like it's just fun, but being able to be like, oh, hey, this is what I got last time, but I'm getting something different. Like, I think that's a really slick, way to create the conversation because that's what bourbon is and rye whiskey is about, is sharing the moment, having that little thing that's a little bit different. Or if, your wife's, wanting to try the whiskey, they can flip up the card, or someone who doesn't know, they can look at it and say, oh, these are my tasting notes that, that you've had at your home bar. So I think that's a really slick little marketing piece.
Yeah, it's definitely it's little notes of just literary themes. And I think that's pretty cool. I mean, obviously the bottle, we'll have pictures on Instagram and on the website and things like that. But yeah, I mean, the cues just to literary things is just, I think it's spot on. So to be named Hemingway and then, yeah.
Her biggest concern was anybody old enough to know what a library card was.
If anyone has watched, I believe it is The Recruit on Netflix. They had to use a library card in that show, so people should get their brush up on that.
Well, I will say if they don't, then they've not been paying attention, because even my 7-year-old son still checks out books from the school library, and they still have. They don't use them.
But they got them in the back of it.
They still have them in there, even though they got a barcode on them. But they still have the old ones in there. Yeah, they don't stamp them anymore. So you got a stamp from 1999 or 2000. So it's still, it's still in there, but the technology's changed a little bit.
Man, I only checked out Where the Wild Things Are. That's the only book I checked out ever the library, and I don't know if it made it back.
You'll go find it somewhere at your parents' house one day.
The hell yeah, that was a great book. They made a movie. It was terrible, but the book was awesome.
Yeah, just stick to the book.
Yeah, stick to the book. Normally the book's better than the movie anyway. So Scott, you wrote a review on this a while ago. Revisiting tonight, I always like to go to Scott first from a tasting note perspective. Just give me your general thoughts here, and we'll get the guys' thoughts here that created the whiskey. But what's your thoughts on this whiskey, Scott?
Yeah, I mean, initially I was a little bit confused, and I had to go back and look at my review, and then I went back and looked at my handwritten tasting notes because I always do that too. But initially, I tasted this 4 or 5 months ago. I was a little bit confused about what it was going to taste like because the nose just kind of threw me off. Like it smelled a little bit like a Canadian rye whiskey. And I don't know if people really know what I mean when I say that, but when I smell a Canadian whiskey, I can kind of smell a Canadian whiskey. I'm like, oh, that's probably produced in Canada. I don't know what it is and whatever that note is, but then when I got into the tasting of it, I was like, wow, this kind of just blew my socks off because it was just dark, rich, raisiny, and super rich on the palate. The nose, I even went back to it, and I started thinking cigar box or kind of like a smoky, spicy, cedar wood, something like that. But then going back to the palate, it's kind of got a sweeter, richer, dark cherry, raisin, like plum note. I think I said cinnamon raisin toast was like what I continuously tasted when I went back to it. So tasting it again tonight, I think it's still pretty spot on. My palate's probably changed a little bit in the past 6 months, or what I've eaten today or whatever, but it's definitely like a palate, like the palate shines for me.
Yeah, I think one of the things that I found to be very interesting on this was the finish. It's got a lot of flavor up front. The nose is desserty. The milk chocolate note at the very end is kind of the highlight of the whiskey for me, because it's soft. It's soft in a good way. Like, it's soft from each flavor shows up. It's not punchy. It allows you to roll over your tongue and get the whole palate experience. And that finish is just kind of mellows on your tongue, milk chocolate for me, which is really great. And I've got that on more ryes recently, is that mocha chocolate note. So that's been the highlight. I drank the whole 2-ounce sample that Scott gave me. So I'll probably ask for more from him later. But for tonight, I thought it was a super desserty, has like a syrupy consistency up front. So it gets that part of me, but that mocha ending milk chocolate is spot on.
I think we'll have to light up a cigar and taste this again.
Yeah, definitely.
What do you think about the smoothness at 100 proof?
100 proof's right up Scott and I's alley. Like, that's where we like to drink, most of our whiskeys, 95 to 110. It's kind of where we hover. That's where you get a lot of flavor. People saying that you get all the flavor at barrel strength. Okay, great. Like, have you seen that whiskey's been produced for hundreds of years in Scotland and in Ireland for like 85 proof, and it's delightful. So like, you're missing out if you only drink barrel proof. You're going to burn all your taste buds off. That's not scientific. That's just my opinion. So I went from scientific about oxidation to non-scientific and about burning off your flavor palate. But it's a really nice whiskey, and it's not delicate. It's soft, and it's delightful to drink. That means I can have multiple of them. If it's barrel proof and it's going to burn my nostrils off and I can't taste it after one drink, why do I want to drink more of it?
Yeah, I think in my original review, I said it was surprisingly warm for 100 proof, but it wasn't like it was sharp. It was just like warming. Like it just kind of warms you up, and we'll use the silly term of Kentucky hug, but it really just warms you up. And I, as a not traditional rye whiskey drinker, it didn't have those like sharp notes that some of the rye whiskeys I don't enjoy.
I think you guys kind of hit the nail on the head. It's I like to say it's complex, right? It's just got a lot going on. You've got the rye up front, the spice, the pepper, the typical rye stuff, a little bit of cedar, but then especially with maybe that second sip, you'll start to feel it on the side of your cheeks, and then you'll get some of that cinnamon, and that sherry barrel will start showing through on the finish. Some of that cherry notes, and more of that smooth finish from that sherry barrel. And you'll get some hints from that. It's a rum seasoned sherry barrel, so there's some rum influence in there too.
And I think that's where I'm getting that desserty, syrupy kind of consistency is that rum component of it. And I drank a lot of old rum when I was in Barbados, and it is delightful. If you're a bourbon drinker and you haven't tried aged rum, like, go for it, try it. It's a lot of fun, and it gives you a lot of bourbon-y characteristics. But, I think that will help you understand these finishes a lot better if you're trying these Oloroso finished rums, or if you're trying just rum for the first time and seeing them be exfil for secondary rum cask finishes in bourbon or rye. I think that's a really great thing for people to get a good understanding of what it's all going to taste like.
I think the color on this is top notch. I mean, it's got a beautiful color, great legs, and that doesn't hurt either.
So we've talked a lot about the whiskey at hand. So, the next project up, you mentioned something like that. So what's the long-term play for Hemingway? Is it always to stay a rye, or will there be sister products, down the line as well?
right now we're going to stick with the rye. Down the road, I mean, we'll keep the option open. The company is the Hemingway Whiskey Company. It's not the Hemingway Rye Company. So I think we've talked about it a little bit, but we're definitely going to focus on rye for the foreseeable future.
No, I think that makes a ton of sense. And with you're going to be wearing other hats, right, Jacob? So it's like it's not just like you focusing on this brand. You're going to be focused on making a lot of whiskey for a variety of brands and a variety of people. How do you balance that? Wearing both of those hats, being part of Hemingway and then being part of Western Kentucky Spirits.
Yeah, it keeps me busy right now. That's for sure. Especially with the releases in the market. Doing bottle signings. We got some stuff coming up with Kroger and Liquor Barn in Kentucky. So yeah, it definitely keeps me busy. I'm very, very thankful that Clayton is now on board to help with a lot of this stuff. So really looking forward to him getting ingrained in that. But yeah, I mean, we're busy at the distillery. That's for sure. It's a big distillery. It's 50,000 barrel capacity. So, with all of the recent acquisitions in bourbon land here lately, we're actually going to be the second largest Kentucky owned distillery now. So Heaven Hill number one, and then we're all 100% Kentucky owned, Kentucky built. So we're now number two.
No, that's exciting.
Wow. Yeah. And then you said you'll be online June?
Yeah, it'll be June of this year.
Okay. Wow.
So that went up relatively quick, right? Like this wasn't a long process. Like that's a fast built distillery.
Yeah, I think it's the largest distillery ever built on Honda generators. We just got our power turned on today. So yeah, it's we broke ground in November, and just got a really good team that works six days. Some of them work 7 days a week, just getting the thing built.
So let's get nerdy for a second because we like to talk about stills. How big's the still? And
yeah, Vendome, 36-inch, copper still, copper condensers, copper beer heater, copper doubler, a lot of copper in our system, which is important. We got 15 fermenters, 15,000 gallons each, 2 cookers, rick houses, warehouses on site. We got 81 acres. So yeah, mill all our own grain on site. Grain systems all going up now, 2 hammer mills. So we're ready to rock and roll.
I was going to say, sounds like it.
So will you get the majority of your all's grain local as well?
Yeah, all of our corn is really from 5 or 10 miles down the road. We're about 30 miles outside of Owensboro and Beaver Dam. So halfway between Owensboro and Bowling Green, a lot of farms. So all our corn's coming from there. The rye for Hemingway will be on site, but a lot of we're making some wheated bourbons for some customers. Yeah, variety of mash bills. I think we're going to start out. We'll probably make 7 or 8 different mash bills the first year alone.
No, that's exciting, and it's cool to be local with your products, like for Kentucky by Kentucky, right? Which is pretty neat. And you got to love this state for just having the weirdest named cities on earth. Beaver Dam. I mean, like that's just the most Kentuckian thing that could possibly be had is Beaver Dam.
You got Gravel Switch in Possum Kill or Possum Run or something.
Oh yeah, Pleasureville's still my favorite. Just it's awesome.
Their favorite was Monkey's Eyebrow.
Oh, there we go.
Yeah, that's down in Western Kentucky.
They had a world famous monkey burger.
That sounds like something I wouldn't eat. And now we've entered to the things that Jake likes to talk about the most, which is food. And Monkey Burger is going to top the list of things Jake probably wouldn't eat. Actually, no, I would fail at Fear Factor. So any of that crap that they would put in front of me, I definitely wouldn't eat.
Probably not made with real monkeys. I don't think they're really native to Kentucky there, Jake.
Hey, there's some stupid shit that I have seen in my years of travel. And yes, I will stay away from anything called Monkey Burger or anything like that because I've just read too many bad articles about monkeys and food.
Ron just polished off his bottle of Hemingway Rye.
Yeah,
so
yeah.
when's the next one
Yes.
getting opened?
Let's see this one.
Clayton, you better get to sending them. Come on, man. Your brand recognition here.
I think-
look out for him.
I think Clayton and his mother have been in this one.
No,
It's quality control.
Oh man, no, this is awesome. I think it's great. It's cool just to get to hear, the stories and banter with the family. I think a lot of people just don't know the traditions that come with family whiskey making, and this has been really cool just to see how you all interact during this conversation and understand how you all are creating a business with your co-founders to put out a really solid rye whiskey that I think people need to pay attention to here in 2023.
Yeah, we're proud of it.
Well, with that being said, I'd like to give our guests the opportunity to share where people can find out more about the rye whiskey. So where can people find out more about Hemingway Rye and the upcoming news and releases that may be happening here in 2023?
Yeah, the best place will be the website, www.hemingwaywhiskies with an S at the end.com.
Well, there you have it.
We're on the socials, Instagram and Facebook and all that stuff. And
Yeah.
you guys mention us from time to time on the Bourbon Lens. Appreciate that.
Yep. We like to make sure we're highlighting things that are happening in the whiskey industry. And we, make sure that, we're putting up content that people can relate to. So keep putting out good whiskey, and Scott and I will keep recognizing it along the way.
That's a deal.
Yeah. Awesome. Well, thanks everybody for listening to this episode of the Bourbon Lens. We truly appreciate the Call family for joining us tonight. If you want to know more about Bourbon Lens, go over to Instagram, Twitter, and Facebook at Bourbon Lens. If you want to be a part of our growing community at Patreon, go over to patreon.com/Bourbon Lens. And last but not least, if you do us a favor, go to your favorite podcast listening app and download and subscribe the latest episode and give us a 5-star review if you feel so inclined. And until next time, cheers.
Cheers.